Good afternoon. My name is Anurag Garg. I'm a professor of cardiothoracic surgery. I'm not here to talk to you today as a surgeon, but as a fellow traveler on the journey of life. When I'm asked what is more important, is it the journey or the destination? My usual reply is it is the company of your thoughts, your actions, and the people around you that makes all the difference in the journey of life. Let me ask you a simple question. Why do things happen the way they do? Why do some patients against all odds survive? Some don't. We see it on a daily basis in our medical practice. It's very simple. Sometimes we choose something, sometimes we don't choose anything, but the effects are there. Sometimes we may take a decision which changes everything. Sometimes the decision may not. The fact of the matter is that this is a simple and mighty principle called cause and effect, and it affects us in every aspect of our lives and this world itself. There is a relationship between an action, which is the cause, and the result, which is the effect, and this relationship is called causality. The simplest example I can give in a medical forum is mosquitoes cause mosquito bites. Mosquito bites can lead to malaria. When we come to trying and understanding cause and effect, we find that it's more than just a plain definition. It is not an abstract scientific or philosophical concept. It is an invisible thread that connects our thoughts, choices, and outcomes. For example, some of you overslept in the morning and you missed the morning class. It used to happen to me very often. On the obverse, you studied very hard and you maxed the test. Even more, you decide one day to donate your organs, and sometime in the future, you might save countless lives because of that decision. A stone thrown into a still pond causes ripples which spread concentrically in all directions and are only inhibited by the size of that pond. The bigger the pond, the further they travel. The fact of the matter is that every action that we indulge in causes a ripple. And it was the French philosopher, mathematician, and scientist René Descartes, and that's how you pronounce his name, Descartes, who said these famous words in Latin, cogito ergo sum, which translates into, I think, therefore I am. Now, Descartes was a very interesting person. Other than the attributes that I have already pointed out, he was also a soldier. He fought for the Dutch Republic. He was an architect. He was a teacher. But it is this concept of mind and body, this concept of the mind-body duality that he introduced, which lays the basis of what is known as the Cartesian philosophy, and which is where we treat everything as cause and effect. We think, therefore we exist. Our thoughts become actions. Our actions lead to outcomes. Please remember this. If you look around us, cause and effect is everywhere. There are numerous examples in history, nature, science. Look to history. It was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand in that small country called Serbia in Central Europe, which led to the First World War, which engulfed practically the whole globe in the beginning of the 20th century. When it comes to nature, plants grow because they receive sun, so the warmth and the light from the sun, and also water. In science, we all have heard about Sir Isaac Newton. Sitting casually below an apple tree, he sees the apple fall down. Eureka! Gravity is discovered. Interestingly enough, the very simplistic nature of causality did not led a lot of people to debunk it. They found that it was very vague for the exact science of physics. However, today, it is considered perhaps the most sacred tenet in physics. Indeed, people feel it is the glue that binds the universe together. But let's come closer to where we are in medicine, and you will find causality is everything when it comes to medicine. You get a patient with symptoms, which is the effect. You go back and find out what are the causes that led to these symptoms. So, we see a patient, we understand, we go into the cause and effect, we diagnose, we treat, and we may even prevent the disease in the future. For example, we treat hypertension to prevent coronary artery disease, prevent a stroke. We study the factors that lead to diseases like diabetes, like renal failure, even pandemics. Basically, every successful diagnosis, every intervention on our part is a triumph of causality over utter chaos. If causality wasn't there in our profession, there would be chaos. Traditionally, medical studies have been all about studying one effect, or one cause. But the COVID pandemic taught us that it's very important to look at interconnected, interdependent factors that lead to health outcomes. So today people feel we need to study multiple causes and multiple effects. But the fact remains that causality is still the principle on which we work on. Let me get a little personal here. This is a personal story. I grew up in Bombay, as Mumbai was known those days. And having studied medicine at the Armed Forces Medical College, found myself in the army. I had no idea whatsoever about what the army was all about. One day, I find myself at 16,000 feet in the Sikkim Himalayas, huddled behind a rock in a raging hailstorm. What am I doing here? I asked myself. But at that moment, a soldier came up to me with a piping hot glass of tea. Believe me, it was the best glass of tea I've ever tasted in my life. Not because of the way it was made, but for what it represented. It represented courage, care, and connection in the organization. Later on, I had the privilege of seeing a Christian commanding officer leading multi-religious prayers in an army camp with Hindu, Muslim, and Sikh soldiers. It was a life-shaping moment for me. That's the time I realized that the cause was a life choice. I had joined the army. The effect was a lifelong belief in unity, service, and purpose. We all face such events and such influences in our lives. Most of them good, some may be bad, but they always have a profound influence on the way we look at life and the way we conduct ourselves in life. I chose to become a paratrooper, jumping out of a perfectly serviceable plane, not once, 37 times. You might as well ask, what was the need to jump out of a serviceable plane? But be that as it may, every time I jumped, there were 4 eternal seconds before the parachute opened. What did it tell me? The cause was courage, or foolhardiness, if you want to call it that. But the effect was an utter, undiluted freedom, that freedom of floating up in the air with the world below you. And true exhilarating joy, because you have trusted the process and taken the leap of faith. When it comes to this modern world, let's face it, this world is very different from what we saw when we were in medical college more than 40 years back. It's a complex new world. The leaps we take as individuals, professionals, or citizens have very uncertain effects or uncertain outcomes. Modern challenges are not linear. They are messy, layered, and unpredictable. We are surrounded by global systems. We have never been more interconnected in this world ever. Whether it is economic instability, political polarization, climate change, or even technologies that evolve faster than we can regulate them, or for that matter, the tariffs that the world is facing today. We are all deeply interconnected. In this scenario, cause and effect is just not a necessity, it is vital for survival, leadership, and progress. We can trace the origin of complex problems and devise solutions to those problems before the consequences unfold themselves. Most importantly, we can take responsibility for the consequences, not for just what we do, but what might be the result of our consequences. Let's talk about artificial intelligence. It's the flavor of the moment as far as this world is concerned. You've got an algorithm which is meant for sorting out resumes, but inadvertently ends up instigating social bias. You've got a chatbot which has not been trained enough, so it ends up spreading misinformation. All these problems are happened not because there was malicious intent, but because we did not stop to think what can be the consequence of an action that we are taking. We need to do that. The fact is, dealing with such issues with cause and effect, with causality, is ultimately a wisdom. It keeps us grounded. And it calls not only for action, bold action on our part, but for action with clarity, foresight, and accountability. When it comes to the universal law of cause and effect, it's one of the 12 universal laws of the world. We find, you look at cultures, you look at philosophies, causality is sacred. The old proverb says, you sow what you reap. The action that we take is the seeds that we sow. The crop that we get is the result of our actions. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, cause and effect are two sides of one fact, like two sides of one coin. So intimately, cause and effect are linked to each other. Peter Drucker exhorted us to distinguish between doing things right and doing the right thing. And why? Let's look closer at home at Hinduism, Buddhism, and the fantastic concept of karma. Karma clearly says every action has consequences, and these consequences are yours to own. Karma is not transferable. So, I exhort you today, take the leap. If necessary, look before you leap, but take the leap. But in taking the leap, remember, every choice has ripples which in today's world spread far and wide and very fast. Leadership begins with action and also involves a tremendous amount of awareness. And invention is important for progress, but it is the intention which is paramount. After all this spiritual and scientific and philosophical talk about cause and effect, let's get down to brass tacks. What is the final message? Why does this matter for you, the future doctors of this world, the important people who are going to lead us further on into the decades of this century? As medical students, you are taught what caused this disease. I would like you to think more deeply. What causes you to care? What causes you to choose this path? It's the ethics of causality which are more important. We deal with causality as a scientific entity, but the ethics are more important, particularly when it comes to the medical profession. I'm sure you will agree with me. We are not just observers, but we are active participants in the medical profession. Our actions shape outcomes, whether it is as a professional, whether it is for our colleagues, whether it is for this world, and we must own these actions. I'll give you an example. In the future, you are a physician, you make a rare diagnosis and you save the life of a young lady who goes on to become a number of things. Now, you've just done your duty, but what if this lady becomes a climate scientist who devises a superb method of removing carbon from the atmosphere, or becomes a policymaker who rewrites the whole system of climate change and renewable energy, or this lady becomes a teacher who continues to inspire generations and generations of change makers. What is important to remember here, and that's what I'm trying to tell, is that your action is a ripple that touches the entire world, and in today's world, very fast. You may not know the full extent of your impact, but it is real. You've saved the life of this lady, you were just doing your duty, but she goes on to make a tremendous change, major impact to this world. So lastly, please remember, every thought is a seed. Every action is a cause. Every cause is shaping the world, starting with you. Thank you very much.